So welcome to the show, Maureen.
Thank you, Tricia. It's so great to be here and learn more about what you're doing. And I think what you're doing is spectacular. So I'm excited for you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, before we were recording, you had said, did you go to University of Santa Monica, where at one time they had a master's degree program in spiritual psychology. I did not, but my teacher, Susie Lula, is a graduate from there. She's been in the field for nearly 25 years or maybe even more, but it was a beautiful program and theory based in really the marrying of the spiritual realm and the psychological. So the backdrop is really that the universe is a benevolent place. The things that are happening for us, not to us. And that universe is always supporting us. So it's a lot about where we are on our soul's journey as well. When Susie, my teacher, first named her program, it was called Soul Care. And I believe right now it's soul psychology, but it's like, how do we understand ourselves as the soul on this journey? And then the psychology part of it, I think even Susie teaches in her class that the root meaning of psychology is something to do with our soul. And so it's something that we don't realize because that's not the way we've come to think of it. But that part of the psychology married with the spiritual is looking at how our emotions are messengers, how compassion can really be this balm to help heal the hurt places inside of us, and inner child work, and the things that address who we are in the present human self. So, there's just so much expansion and learning to do around this. And I've felt like it's a really juicy field, and one where talk about taking on new lenses.
Yeah.
We're coming into a time, because on my podcast, this week is 143 episodes. And I love meeting someone like you because you can see that women are dovetailing in their work, and these kind of topics are really emerging. And I really think of it as they're emerging in the collective more and more because it is so needed. So I think you're a sister to me in doing this work, and also being a woman, getting her voice into the world, which I think is really powerful.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I think that what you're saying, when we do look at that, even through the lens concept, it's a completely different way of life. What really struck me is what you're saying about emotions are messengers. That's such a different perspective on how to experience all the emotions that come up every day for everyone.
Yeah, I agree too. Prior to studying spiritual psychology, I started out in the coaching world. I never knew I was going to go down that path. And I first went into integrative health and wellness, and that wasn't deep enough for me. I wanted to keep on continuing. And I ran across a woman, Dr. Shefali Tsabary. You might know her, and some of your listeners might know her, but I did her conscious parenting. And that's through that I met Susie. But Dr. Shefali really talked about how in your home of origin were emotions handled? Were they accepted? Were you allowed to express yourself? Because so many of us, I'm in my mid-50s now, but in my generation grew up in households. And I think this is pretty pervasive, handed down generationally. I think it's changing. And I think there's a lot more information where parents are becoming really aware. Conscious can put people off, but it's really being aware in your parenting of yourself. But if we can really understand that anger and sadness and frustration and overwhelm are here with messages for us, and typically leading us to say, thanks for being here. I'm curious about you. What might you be here to tell me? And what is it, a need or an unmet need underneath this that I need to express? So it gives us a framework to not just sort of like demonize our emotions, put certain ones in the closet. I think in midlife, a lot of people, and I think younger people are awakening to this earlier, is like, oh, you mean to tell me anger is okay? You mean to tell me I can feel sad and not feel bad if that goes on too long?
Yeah.
There's so many different angles and lenses to look through with that.
Oh my God, yes. I mean, how does that affect you personally when you went through this training and you're practicing as a coach with this particular style, with this really vast spiritual baseline.
I think it informs now everything I do when I have something come up in my own life, like I did the other night with one of my young adult children. I honored what was coming up for me in a form of sadness, and I sat with it. I had the opportunity to then look forward to the next day and clear a few things from my schedule so I could make more room for the sadness.
Wow.
And I'll attribute this to my teacher, Susie, but she says something you're like, oh, and it just sticks with you. But she always says you can be with another person's uncomfortable emotions to the degree you can be with your own.
Okay.
And so if someone in front of you has that anger or sadness or despair or even joy, that that can be really, really uncomfortable. But then when we start doing that inner work, the more we sit with our own and get curious about it and really make a lot of space and give ourselves compassion, then when it comes to us from a loved one or a friend or whoever it is, we will find ourselves having more spaciousness for it.
Wow.
And so it's a beautiful unraveling that happens.
Wow. That's actually incredible to think about. That it's possible to be able to be that capable of holding space for someone because we are capable of holding space for ourselves is really, for me personally, that would be a goal. That's amazing to be able to
Yeah.
even know that that is a possibility. And that's one of the things I like to think about within the framework with vision again, and just even visualizing, knowing that that is a possibility to maybe get there someday, I think is so helpful because it's overwhelming. The feelings that are coming up all the time, it's overwhelm, especially now. There's just so many feelings happening in the world. And to know that it's possible is really helpful, I think.
Mm. Yeah, you put that so beautifully. When you say that, even if you have the curiosity about it, oh, could that be true? I think when the concept was first introduced to me, that this kind of maybe invitation that, oh, when you do the inner work, or let's say you have a disappointment and you know you're not going to get an apology from the other person, or you're not going to be able to work it out in conversation where you get what you need, the premise that you can give that to yourself and that can be a healing medicine. I'm like, nah, nah, that's a stretch, right? But when we begin to practice, when I work with people, sometimes when you get into the land of compassion,
Yeah.
it's almost like, what is compassion? It's a word, it's a concept, is it real? And sometimes recently I've been using the word softness in its place because I think that softness is something like, can you be softer with yourselves? I mean, because we know if you say to someone, you know, what is the voice of the judge or the critic inside of you, we know what that feels like. We've all done that. But then if you suggest, can you give yourself compassion? It's like compassion can feel 100 miles away. But if you say, can you take a softer tone? So using words that work for us, I'm always fascinated by
Yeah.
words. And if one doesn't work for you, because even in the spiritual world, people will talk about, you can call it God, you can call it source energy, you can call it the universe. And it's like, yeah, we're all talking about the same thing.
Yes. Yes.
It's a oneness consciousness. We're all breathing the same air. And the reason I love this work too is because you're always, every single day, you're discovering a new layer of it. And it may be the most obvious thing, but you're like, wow, God, I never saw it that way. And you kind of look around like, am I slow on the go here? But it's just, I feel like that's the way consciousness awakening processes work. They're different for each of us, right? But if we're willing to be awake and aware, we start seeing a lot and understanding it in new ways.
Oh my God, yes. I really love what you said about compassion too, and how important language is, because the word compassion to me, it sounds like something that's really hard. Like, I don't know if I
Yeah.
can get that, but when you say it's soft, think of soft, that's something I can do. That seems much
Yeah.
easier for me to tap into. I can be
Mhm.
softer in the situation. So
Yeah.
I love that idea of how you can change the concept a little bit and really help a client to embrace something that maybe seems like too hard at the moment.
Yeah. I had someone remind me the other day. She said, "You have a very feminine way of approaching the world." And I never thought of myself as feminine in a sense. If anything, I don't know, I felt like we go through life doing.
Yeah.
I grew up with, I created the Mystical Sisterhood, which is really interesting. I grew up with four sisters. Yet when you see women who giggle together, and maybe you're like this with your girlfriends, or they fall into the hug, or they hold an embrace longer, like I felt like I was a little unable to do that.
Mhm.
And I do think there's a corollary with it between when we give ourselves the softness and we look at the edges and give it to ourselves, that's intimate to do that with yourself, right? And I
Yeah.
think that sometimes women are like that way, in like this gorgeous sensual way. That's intimacy too. And I think that I didn't grow up with that from a parental perspective. But last week when this woman said to me, "You have like this feminine way of saying things," I was like, "Oh, that was a really neat reflection." I don't always see that. I think like, "Oh, I've got to use my voice more. I've got to say it more." Culture's telling me, certain families, like, say it this way, say it that way.
Yes.
But with you beginning your journey, it sounds like you've got a whole nother journey of self-expression, but you're going to do it just your unique way in your own style. And I think any of the listeners, anyone starting new endeavors, it's like, tune into your voice and what you have to say, because I feel like that's how we create the tapestry and the weaving of the collective.
Oh, that's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. You're encouraging me. I appreciate that. And I also want to ask you more about this mystical sisterhood.
It was one day in about 2019 where I just had this name drop into my head. And it first came as Mystical Sisters. And I earmarked it in my mind. And I knew it's any of us that get these revelations, some people call them downloads, and they just seem to drop out of the sky. Pay attention. I don't know if that's what happened with you in the podcast, but Mystical Sisters came to me, and then it was a couple years later. And I think that's kind of neat in terms of how our processes work as humans, is sometimes we get an idea, but it doesn't come to fruition for a while.
Yeah.
And I guess suspending the need to know, because it wasn't like I was actively thinking about it, but I had gone through a breast cancer journey in 2018, and I went through surgery and chemotherapy and radiation. But it was during that I started to pull in a woman who was a medium channeler. She channels archangels, started consulting her. So I had my Western medical team over here, but over here, I'm thinking, I'm going to try Reiki. I'm going to try acupuncture. I'm going to have this woman advise me. And so it was a time where all these worlds were coming together. And then I had the download, and I think it was in the fall of 23 in January. And it was about Mayish of 22 that idea started coming back to me, and it wouldn't leave me alone. And I never thought I was going to do a podcast. That was never part of some grand plan. And then I thought, I'm going to do a podcast. And then I started it, and I just started to pull in intuitives, healers, and other courageous women. I've had a few men on so far. And I think I'm going to open up to more of that, because we women have men in our lives, whoever they are, brothers, partners, sons. And so I think that that's an important voice to bring to the table for in the future. But it's been great fun, because I've just been able to interview all sorts of different people. And I would say too, that in the process, and maybe you found this when I think you said you were an optometrist, but we begin something. And if we have the courage to begin, we don't need to know all the details. We
Hmm.
just start, and the details fill in. And they might not fill in the first month, right? They start to fill in through the people we meet. And that's why you and I sharing this job as a podcaster now, is the people I meet fascinate me. And
Yeah.
it's a joy to bring them to the world. And I just love it. I feel like it's a collective of women, of sisters. And then I think my own sisterhood I grew up with is a beautiful teacher and foundation for what I do too. I don't think I would have created it if I hadn't had that, even though it was not in my mind. I think it was probably in my heart or
Yeah.
my soul. My soul knew the
Yes.
way.
Yes. You definitely know about sisterhood.
Yes.
For me, I don't have a sister, but you have so much experience of sisterhood that it just, now you have another sisterhood.
Yes, yes, yeah. So it's been fun, and 143 episodes is probably 100 guests, maybe. I want to count because I want to celebrate that. And
Oh,
yeah, it's been fun just to play with different endeavors and open up a community. Right now, the community I'm running is for women who are beginning soul-led businesses, really soul-led endeavors where I feel like if you feel like that's you, you might know it just from those words alone. But I believe that there's a lot of light being brought into the world, a lot of love. I feel like it's here for a reason. I feel like it's a bridge to the experience we're meant to be having.
mhm.
And the outer news will not tell you it's going on. But I believe for the people who are studying consciousness that it is rising in the world.
Yeah.
And so I called that group Mystical Sisterhood Rising to bring people to the table who want to bring their voices into the world and create harmony, create peace, create a world where we see our own abundant natures.
Okay.
And to me, that's a big idea, but it's fun. And someone also said to me last week that every ounce of light being put into the world right now is important.
It is.
And yeah.
It is. I totally agree. So, how does it work? The mystical sisterhood. Do you have members that can join? What is the framework?
The framework for that is I call that the Mystical Sisterhood Rising Community. And that's where if you have something that you want to birth and bring to life, it may have been in process for a time now. Come in. It's a weekly meeting
Mhm.
and we meet for an hour. I set the time as static on Wednesday afternoons at 12 Central. But it's really thematic in a bit of teaching, but the vision is to have a place not only where we can inspire, because I also know from my own journey that being a solopreneur and launching on your own can be a very lonely place.
Mhm.
And I work like 24/7 out of my house. I mean, I'm not working that many hours, but I don't get a break from my home environment. And so to have a place to be inspired and to network. And my hope is as it grows,
Mhm.
the women learn each other's work because think about this what you will. But if we are running on the premise that consciousness is rising, I believe that more and more people are going to be interested in it. People are awakening, they're becoming more aware. And again, it seems that's still marginalized, but we know that we follow a lot of people who are doing beautiful work like this.
Yeah.
And so I really want it to be a place where I know Tricia's work and I know what she's doing. And it just becomes this beehive of seeing one another, witnessing one another, and upholding one another. Because it's often said that women, we were cultured into thinking that we were each other's competition.
Mhm.
I think that there's a lot there for all of us, even if I say something that's not that complimentary of someone in my life, it's okay, Maureen, look at that, look at that. Because we've been just so conditioned on the non-supportive. And I just, for me though, the unified consciousness, the working together, the really shining the light. And I think that's why I've liked the podcast so much. It's
Yeah.
so fun to shine the light on another woman.
Yes. Yes. And going back to, I feel like what you said before about believing in abundance, because I think when you believe that there's abundance and you know that there's enough for everyone, you don't feel this competition or I
Yeah.
can't share this. There's not enough. It's that abundant belief is there's enough and everyone belongs. And
Yes.
and I really relate to what you're saying about this path can be isolating because there's no office culture. It's not the same. It's a lot of time alone, a lot of time reading and studying and working on Zoom with clients. And I I think there's a huge need for collective support so that people don't feel alone when they're doing this work, because we just don't realize that there are other people.
Right. And then I feel if I do a podcast recording like this, or if I meet with people, something changes and then my energy comes up again. Right. And
Yeah.
I can find when I'm working alone for hours, I need to get up and break up that energy. But
Yeah.
I believe it's true because I think there's so many beautiful angles of upholding one another and having that as a model and doing so. I think like an old model of it would be I'm doing this almost selflessly, right?
Mhm.
Like I'm gonna promote you, but to the detriment of me. It was almost like a martyr complex that was painted
Yes.
sometimes. But it's, oh, can we actually uphold what each other's doing? You said it, without it taking away anything for me. Because I believe too, when they say there's 8 billion people in the world, there's someone for everyone. So who's going to go to Tricia's vibration will be different who goes to my vibration, right?
Mhm.
And can we trust that? And that there is enough.
That is living in a different way. That's really a different way of thinking and being, I think. And that's very powerful and very aspirational to get to that place where we actually really look at work that way, and we look at each other's work and we recognize that we belong and that we each have a unique offering, and to celebrate the offerings, and we can actually become more, have more possibilities instead of less. So I
Mhm.
feel like that's a whole new framework, which is great. Are you at a point where you're still taking clients, or where are you there?
Yeah, I am, Tricia. And yes, MaureenSpielman.com is my website, and that's my Instagram handle too. And that's where the two places that I'm mostly showing up. You know how it is too. It's, oh my gosh, there's so many different places to show up. So I've got footprints places, a private Facebook page for Mystical Sisterhood, and on the website, launching a couple things for the fall coming up, Wisdom of the Women gathering. Because what I'm finding too, I'm going to do that on the harvest full moon. And I'm not an astrologer, I'm not a big moon person, but I do know more and more that those are powerful evenings underneath the full moon. So doing something around that, I feel like when we talk about that part where we're all living the human experience, everyone I know is going through something.
Mhm.
And that is, as much as I love to live, and I do live in that mystical world, I love to listen to astrologers on YouTube and even the stuff people would consider way out there. But I also know that we're all, whether it's dealing with aging parents, something with your spouse, if you're married, there's so many different things going on for people. And the wisdom of the women came to me because we all have so much to teach each other. In conscious parenting, Dr. Shefali would always say there's no hierarchy. And I learned that through the podcast too. When I first started podcasting, I would have these women come through and they would have maybe a 15, 20-year body of work. And I was doing something in my consciousness where I'd be like, oh, they're higher than me. It took me a while to be like, oh, no, it doesn't matter how many degrees someone has or how long they've been working. We're all equals. And that really helped me out when I was able to say, you don't need to put anyone on a pedestal. They might be great and you're enamored with what they're doing and saying and all the things. But I really feel that we're all just, if we're all one, we're all equal. And I don't know why I went into that, but I think it was the wisdom of the women gatherings and the stories we hold, and just we are powerful. And then putting a couple things together for mothers this fall, mothers of younger children, and then those in transition in the high school empty nester phase. So creating some fun things and seeing what people want and what they want to experience, and getting into the storytelling of it all and the sharing and the guidance too, but really being safe, warm and comforting places for people to be. So thanks for giving me a chance to share that.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. You have such a joyful energy when you're talking about your work. It's very obvious to me that it's jumping through the screen. You have such
Thank you.
radiant joy when you're talking about these workshops, the planning you're doing, and with motherhood too. It's another area where women can feel very alone and they need support. And That's, I think, a huge resource to have, somewhere to go, someone where you can feel like you fit in, you belong. So isolating, especially in the early days. So that's really wonderful work. So before we close, we talked in the beginning about the lenses and how children, when they're 8 years old, they've coined it in psychology, this term imprinting, where they have to wear these lenses that were given to them by the caregivers around them. And then over time, we realize how that perspective has shaped us. My podcast and my work with the New Lens Method and Her New Lens is about really taking a look at the lenses that you're currently wearing and how they're influencing your life. And having the opportunity to maybe have a different lens. And there's so many different lenses that we could try on. But I want to ask you, what would be a lens that you would like listeners to try on, or you think might be helpful as they're navigating their days?
Well, the one that comes to mind, it's a great question. It's the lens of allowance. And interesting. I think that sometimes I will, if I go to use the word acceptance, it's got a different energy. And sometimes I will just take the word acceptance out and say allowance. And the question would be, can you allow with compassion, with grace, whatever your experience is today?
Oh, I love
Can
that.
you allow? So I think it's the allowance for your experience. Can you allow the emotions that are coming? Can you allow to see yourself with softness and unconditional regard? Just, it feels like that because we're living in a time where I think that, yes, we are moving from a doing to being culture, but we're also being largely drawn in to outside influences. So it's bringing it back to our own experience. And can you allow your own experience and your own expression? Can you allow whatever comes after that to fill in the blank for your listeners? I think could be very powerful.
Wonderful. That's something I had never even thought of, that word allowance. But when you're saying it to me, it's definitely a lens I want to try.
It's a great question. And you're going to add up all those lenses and they're all going to be with different words. And
Yeah.
then you could have someone with 100 people with the allowance lens and it's going to mean something different. It's so
Yes,
beautiful.
exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Maureen, for being here today.
Yeah.
It's been so wonderful to learn about you, about spiritual psychology, about the lenses that you are using to experience life, and also about mystical sisterhood. I thank you so
Thank you.
much, and thank you. Take care.
Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity.